Good afternoon. How are you? Oh, it's nice out. The sun is out. The Jefferson report would say we're in the 60s and like 2-mile-an-hour winds, and it feels good to be out today. And I just heard some birds making noises. Perhaps we'll hear more as we go along. The time I had today to follow anything else was basically the lead on the Trump case. And the lead on that is that today we have a man who has been forever diminished by having to actually sit in court and listen to the charges that he's responsible for, in which he paid hush money for sexual escapades and then apparently sought to buy silence from those people. And in order to do that successfully, to cover his tracks, he had to fill all sorts of documents which suggest criminal conduct. I mean, the most obvious one, I suppose, is if you start with his fixer, Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen arranged the deal for catch and kill. Get somebody to agree to a story, pay them, and then never run that story, thereby protecting the possibly offended person who would be compromised in his efforts to be elected president of the United States, no less than Mr. Trump in 2016. And fast upon these events was the fact that the Access Hollywood tapes came out. And he says, I can kiss them anywhere, anytime I want, and grab them, and all these kinds of things. And that, in close conjunction, in a close contest with these revelations, might have meant, if only it had happened, that he would not have been elected in 2016. So the motive is pretty obvious. And then the machinations they had to go through is pretty obvious too. I mean, okay, so if I'm a lawyer, do I have a separate practice? Well, as I understood it, Michael Cohen didn't. Michael Cohen worked for Trump. And okay, so if he worked for Trump, did he need a separate entity in order to represent Trump? And if he did that, and Trump was paying for it, why wasn't there a 1099 for services? Well, all of this doesn't make sense because it was done slipshod, not very good legal work. And some say, well, the amount of money that was transferred in the various checks that Trump signed, well, it's more than was necessary to pay Stormy Daniels. Well, okay. What were we paying Michael Cohen for again? Now, if we were paying him anything for his services of advancing the money to keep Stormy quiet, then it would exceed $130,000. But in any case, maybe they wanted a different number so it wasn't so obvious. And Trump supposedly has a taped conversation with Cohen in which the conversation is, maybe we shouldn't have to go forward so quickly because the election's going to happen and then we don't have to pay anybody because it won't matter if it comes out afterwards. So obviously fear trumped, no pun intended, the idea of we can, go bravely through it if it comes out after the election. So how was it for a first day? Well, we have them in a courtroom. We have a jury. We had instructions to the jury. We had an opening, and we had a witness on the stand, the publisher who was going to publish or not publish the stories, as may be. I had a different approach to the case, but I'm not on the ground. I'm not there. And there are probably 10 or 20 ways one can approach this. And we'll just have to see how they work out. The testimony today only went for about an hour or so because the court closed early. So tomorrow we'll hear the rest of that testimony. And it's possible it won't get finished for Wednesday when the court is closed, and may even continue on Thursday. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. What do I think of this? Probably as you, very much encourage that we're actually having a proceeding instead of talking about one, or one being delayed, or courts being invoked and trying to stop it. But we can expect more tricks in the days ahead, because that's who Trump is. He can't change who he is. And I wonder about the defense that Trump offered by his counsel in the short time that both sides spoke today. And he was basically saying, what's wrong with trying to influence an election? Said like a person who's never been involved in running an election or abiding by the laws or paying attention to all these things. And the answer is there's a lot wrong with it. There are all sorts of reporting requirements, some of which apply in this case. And the fact of the matter is, why would you spend that money for what? To keep it from your wife at the same time that you don't care if she knows about it after the election? So I think the motivation of Trump winning the 2016 election is solid. The documents that they made up are solid and don't make sense once you examine them very closely, except in this conspiracy. And Trump talks too much and does too much that is evident to the public, and so it'll be hard to get around. And it's kind of a brazen idea if their defense is really constructed by Trump instead of a lawyer, that he's going to say, there's nothing wrong with what I did, which appears to be what he wants to say. And if I were his counsel, I'd be concerned about his two delusions getting in the way of how I could represent him. The first delusion is him as victim. You know, sociopath, whatever. But it's clear that that's part of it. He's the victim. But he's the victim of what he has done. And the second delusion he has is that he's a genius. So he doesn't have a good judgment on when he's wrong. And his counsel, they say he's only had 2 trials, criminal defense trials. I don't know what that means, because I don't know what experience he had, say, as a prosecutor or in litigation otherwise. I do know he left a very good law firm, and I think his only client, sort of like The Godfather, his only client is Trump. So it's a sort of an unreliable source of fee income. So what can we expect? Well, if counsel drifts as it sounds like he did, a lawyer in search of a defense at this stage of the game, then that's not good for Trump. And if you have to comply with what Trump wants you to do in a courtroom rather than use your judgment, that's another problem. I think I told the story when I had a case against a declared organized crime figure, and he had outstanding counsel, and something didn't go well in court. I was the prosecutor, and we were in the vestibule outside the courtrooms in Lower Manhattan waiting to go back into court, and the client crooked his finger and called over the lawyer and shouted at him, telling him what he wanted and expected. Now, I felt bad for the lawyer, because the lawyer is a very serious lawyer, very capable, and we fenced in court. And he was a real gentleman. After the case, he came over and shook my hand. I don't know what kind of trouble I got him in with his client, but I feel that he managed his client so that he did put on the best defense he could. And there was more than one defendant in the case, and that makes a difference sometimes too. So I can't judge with the little information we have about today how the defense is going. But if their defense is going to be just trying to influence the public, what's wrong with that? That's the Rudy Giuliani defense. There's nothing wrong with paying off people for non-disclosure agreements and keeping from the public stuff that's embarrassing. Well, you know, this is a different kind of story, because there are a whole bunch of misstatements that cannot be justified legally, and the motives, I think, are pretty clear. And I think it's going to be, what some people call these things slow pleas. That is, that you could plead guilty and it'd be over in a few minutes, or you could spend weeks and get to the same place. And I think the latter is where we're going. So, hope you had a good day today, and I hope it was sunny where you are. And with any luck, I'll see you out here among the trees amidst my cathedral of trees. Bye-bye.